Causes of violence. Personal traits linked to violence. Mental illness is weakly related to violence. Mental abnormalities are more closely related. Young people convicted of murder have been shown to suffer from signs of neurological impairments such as abnormal EEGs, multiple psychomotor impairments, and severe seizures. Evidence shows that child abuse and neglect can be connected to violent crimes. More suggests that it is a cycle of violence. Criminologist Kathy Whittam hypothesized that if children are physically abused by their parent or caregiver, that they are more likely to become abusers themselves once they grow up, creating a cycle of violence. However, being abused as a child does not always equal an act of violent crime as you get older. Many lead to normal lives with a model lifestyle different from their childhood. Human instinct. The earliest humans had to be violent to survive. Harvard psychologist Steven Pinker studied the decline of violence and organized history into 6 trends, the first being the pacification process. Violence declined during the period of human evolution when our hunter-gatherer ancestors began to settle into agricultural civilizations. Freud believed that since our ancestors were so violent, we must have instinctual drives that produce violence and aggression. He believed that humans possess 2 opposite instinctual drives, eros and thanatos. Exposure to violence. People who are constantly exposed to violence at home, school, or in the environment may adopt violent methods themselves. There is a racial difference when it comes to violent crimes. This is because African Americans are often forced to live in poverty areas. This directly increases their risk of exposure to violence. When it comes to firearms, even a single exposure to firearm violence doubles the chance that a young person will later engage in violent behavior. Also on the topic of children, those living in areas with extreme violence may become desensitized to the brutality and eventually succumb to violent behaviors themselves. Substance abuse. Substance abusers reportedly have higher rates of violence. Substance abuse influences violence in 3 ways. A psychopharmacological relationship may be the direct result of ingesting mood-altering substances. Drinking reduces information processing skills. As a result, communication, both verbal and nonverbal, become difficult to comprehend. Drug ingestion may also cause economic compulsive behavior. This is when drug users resort to violence to support their habit. A systemic link occurs when drug dealers become territorial, violent, and competitive with rival gangs. Firearm availability. Firearms do not directly cause violence. It's more the people holding them. The UCR reported that 70% of murders, 40% of robberies, and 24% of aggravated assaults involve firearms. The presence of a firearm in a home increases the risk of suicide among adolescents. Overall, if a gun is there, it is likely to get used. Cultural values. Criminologists Marvin Wolfgang and Franco Ferracuti formulated the concept subculture of violence. This is a segment of society in which violence has become legitimized by the customs or norms of that group. This is referring to the issue that neighborhoods in urban areas that experience violence tend to be clumped together. In areas like those, joining a gang as a teen may be part of their norms. National values. Nations with strong communication values have lower rates of violence. On the other hand, nations with high levels of poverty, income inequality, illiteracy, and alcohol consumption tend to have higher rates of violence.
Rape and sexual assault. Rape is defined as the carnal knowledge of a person forcibly against their will. According to the National Crime Victimization Survey, as of 2021, more than 100,000 rape cases were reported to the police and less than 20% were not reported. The NCVS also found 430,000 people were victims of sexual assault in a single year. Patterns of rape and sexual assault. They are categorized as warm weather crimes, meaning more incidents occur between July and August than December, January, and February. The type of rapists are condensed to the planned versus spontaneous, specific versus random, alone or gang, but according to Nicholas Groth, an expert in treating sex offenders, all rape crimes usually involve in power, anger, or sadism. 2 common types of rapes consist of date and statutory rape. Statutory rape refers to sexual activity with a minor who is not legally old enough to consent to sexual activity. Date rape, on the other hand, refers to a non-consensual sexual activity between 2 people who know each other, often occurring during a date or social event. Both statutory and date rape are considered Peking scripts, as they are instances of sexual violence that involve a power dynamic and a violation of consent, rape, and the law. This crime is taken very seriously, no matter the relationship between the victim and offender. Any prior consensual sexual history, either between the victim and the offender, or even the victim and someone else, is not involved in the courts. Only what is related to the rape case, thanks to shield laws.
Murder and homicide. Murder and homicide is described as the unlawful killing of a human or human beings with malice aforethought. It is the only crime in the United States punishable by death. Degrees of murder. There are different levels or degrees of homicide. First-degree murder occurs when a person kills another after premeditation or deliberation. Premeditation means the killing was considered beforehand. Deliberation is when the murder was thoughtfully planned out rather than carried out on impulse. A felony murder is a killing that accompanies a felony, such as robbery or sexual abuse. Second-degree murder occurs when a person's disregard for life and their desire to inflict physical harm results in the victim's death. Homicide without malice is called manslaughter. Voluntary or non-negligent manslaughter happens when a murder is committed in the heat of the moment that provoked violence. Involuntary or negligent manslaughter occurs when someone acts without regard for the harm they may cause others. Deliberate indifference murder is when someone neglects extreme risks to others' safety and lives, which leads to tragic consequences for the victim. One issue that received national attention is if a murder victim can be a fetus. This is referred to as feticide. Nature and extent of murder. Murder tends to be an urban crime. Larger cities experience the greatest rates of structural disadvantages that are linked to high murder rates. Both murder victims and offenders tend to be males. 1/3 of murder victims and almost half of offenders are under the age of 25. Infanticide is the murder of a very young child. Filicide is the murder of an older child, and eldercide is the murder of a senior citizen. Murderers typically have a long involvement in crime. Few people begin a record by killing someone. A murderer's choice of weapon is related to their association with the victim. Those who knew the victim are more likely to use a weapon found at the scene. Murderous relations. Most murders are motivated by rage or anger. Stranger homicides typically occur when in the middle of another felony crime. Males are more likely to kill others in more public contexts, whereas females kill those close to them in more private locations. Intimate partner murder. 40 to 50% of intimate partner homicides in the US are caused by women. Most females who kill their mates do so after suffering repeated violent attacks. Men who kill their partners typically have a long history of violence. Acquaintance murders. Most murders occur among people who are acquainted. It is the result of an anticipated dispute motivated by revenge or jealousy. Stranger murders. Stranger homicides occur often as felony murders during assault, robberies, and burglaries. Sexually based murders happen through domestic disputes, love triangles, sexual abuse, vengeance, self-defense, and even in quote-unquote damaging families' honor by being sexually active. Offenders tend to have neurological and personality disorders. School murders tend to be committed by white males. Shooters are likely to express some form of suicidal behavior and to have been bullied. About 25 students are killed each year at school. Serial killers, mass murderers, and spree killers. A serial killer is a person who kills 3 or more people in 3 or more separate events. In between killings, a serial killer can easily revert back to their normal lifestyle. Serial killers gained notoriety in the 70s. They are typically white males. Types of serial killers. Thrill killers strive for sexual sadism or dominance. They enjoy the sexual gratification they achieve over the lives of their victims. Mission killers want to reform the world or have a vision that drives them to kill. Expedience killers are out for profit or want to protect themselves from a perceived threat. Mass murderers. Mass murder involves the killing of 4 or more victims by one or a few assailants within a single event. Types of mass murderers. Revenge killers want to get even with individuals or society. Love killers are motivated by a warped sense of devotion. They are often depressed people who take their own lives and others with them. Profit killers are usually trying to cover up a crime, eliminate witnesses, and carry out a criminal conspiracy. And lastly, spree killers are individuals who kill multiple victims over a short span of time and follow no detectable pattern. These killers are more likely to act impulsively, taking less time to plan, and may leave careless evidence at the crime scene. Dennis Rader, otherwise known as the BTK Killer. Homicide rate in the United States of America, 2023.
Assault and battery are two different crimes. Assault requires either attempted battery or intentionally frightening the victim by word or deed. No actual touching is required in the case of an assault. Battery requires offensive touching such as slapping, hitting, or punching a victim. Nature and extent of assault. Road rage is a form of assault I'm sure everyone is familiar with. This refers to motorists who assault each other. Each year there are roughly 765,000 assaults reported to the police. The NCVS indicates that there are approximately 4 million assaults each year. 800,000 are considered aggravated and 3 million are simple or weaponless assaults. Dating violence. Many teens are the victims of dating violence. It is estimated that 1 high school girl in 5 may suffer sexual or physical abuse from a boyfriend. Dating violence has been linked to substance abuse, unsafe sex, and eating disorders. Physical dating violence can include moderate to severe scratching, slapping, pushing, slamming, biting, choking, burning, beating someone up, and assault with a weapon. Emotional and psychological abuse include insulting, criticizing, threatening, humiliating, or berating. Relational aggression refers to psychological and emotional abuse that involves the spreading of smears, rumors, and private information in order to harm a partner. Acquaintance and family assault. One area of violence within the family would be child abuse, which refers to the physical or emotional trauma to a child without reason. This can be in forms of beating or neglect. Child sexual abuse is also another form. A number of factors have been linked to child abuse and neglect. The parents may have been abused themselves. Blended families. This is when children are raised with unrelated adults, resulting in higher rates of abuse. The parents may become abusive if they're isolated from their friends, neighbors, or relatives who can help in a time of crisis. Or the parents may have mental health issues such as depression. Parental abuse refers to parents being abused by their children. Children of all ages tend to be more violent towards their mothers and hit their mothers more than their fathers. Slightly more boys than girls hit parents. Spousal abuse, or domestic violence, is the physical and/or mental abuse between spouses. In assault and battery crimes, 627 are reported to police, 255 reports lead to arrest, 105 cases get referred to prosecutors, 41 cases will lead to a felony conviction, 33 criminals will be incarcerated.
Robbery. Robbery is the taking or attempting to take anything of value from the care, custody, or control of a person or persons by force or threat of force or violence and/or by putting the victim in fear. Robberies are a part of violent crime due to the use of force involved in the crime for money and/or goods. With robbery, there are two types of robbers, opportunists and professionals. Opportunists are looking for easy ways to get cash at that moment, and professionals are those who have a long-term commitment to crime, such as those criminals who robbed reality TV star Kim Kardashian, revealing it was a 2-year planned out heist as written in the article. What all robbers have in common, according to Richard Wright and Scott Decker, when interviewing active robbers for their book, Armed Robbers in Action, Stick-Ups in Street Culture, robbers pick their targets carefully, and most robberies are calculated rather than spontaneous. Robberies are often not reported to law enforcement due to those who were victims of crime being criminals themselves, or an acquaintance in a robbery that has taken place where the victim are the people the robber knows and don't want to snitch on their family, friend, lover, etc.
Contemporary forms of interpersonal violence means any violent act against someone including murder, physical assault, sexual assault, stalking, robbery, and domestic violence. Hate crimes. Violent acts directed toward a particular person or group merely because the targets share racial, ethnic, religious, or gender characteristics. Types of hate crimes include thrill-seeking hate crimes, reactive hate crimes, mission hate crimes, and retaliatory hate crimes. Nature and extent of hate crimes. Most incidents are motivated by race, religion, sexual orientation, or ethnicity. Controlling hate crimes. Today, almost every state jurisdiction has enacted some form of legislation designed to combat hate crime. Is hate crime free speech? The U.S. Supreme Court has made it clear those who intend to commit an act of violence to a particular individual or group are not protected under free speech and can be criminalized. Workplace violence. Violence such as assault, rape, or murder committed at the workplace. The typical offender is a middle-aged white male who faces termination in a worsening economy. When younger workers kill, it is usually while committing a robbery or some other felony. In some incidents, coworkers have been killed because they refused romantic relationships. Stalking is directed at a specific person and involves repeated physical or visual proximity, non-consensual communication, or implied threats sufficient to cause fear in a reasonable person. Stalkers' strategies include surveillance, life invasion, intimidation, and interference through sabotage or attack. Women are more likely to be stalked than men. Although stalking usually stops within 1 or 2 years, victims experience its social and psychological consequences long afterward. More than 75% of women who were murdered by their current or former intimate partners were stalked by their killers before the murder.